know how to fix the holes in our ozone layer. You don't know how to bring the salmon back up a dead stream. You don't know how to bring back an animal now extinct. And you can't bring back the forest that once grew where there is now a desert.
You have ignored us in the past and you will ignore us again. We have run out of excuses and we are running out of time.
Show us your faithfulness. Show us your trustworthiness. Show us your honesty. Prove us wrong.
Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. And we're starting off the show tonight with some breaking news coming in. Just a short while back, Hamas issued a statement announcing its intention to extend the 4-day ceasefire with Israel. Before we get on to the other developments, let me just quote from that statement. The Islamic resistance movement Hamas seeks to extend the truce after the 4-day period ends through serious efforts to increase the number of those released from imprisonment as stipulated in the humanitarian ceasefire agreement. That is what the statement says. Now, on your screen right now are the latest visuals coming in from the Ophir prison in West Bank. Now, as and when there is any movement on the ground with regard to the hostage and prisoner exchange, we will, of course, be getting you the latest updates, the pace of the developments being such that we will continue to go back to the latest visuals coming in from on the ground and helping piece together the developments for you. Now, as for the hostage release, it has been delayed and we will be getting you the latest on that as well. Now, just for some context here, ever since the agreement was struck, Hamas officials have indicated their intention to extend it. In fact, some of them have also apparently stated that they are willing to release all hostages if Israel was willing to free all Palestinian prisoners. And by doing so, Hamas could easily buy at least 20 more days of relief. And this essentially could give the group time to regroup and recover, something that Israel ideally would not want. But then again, Israel, remember, is facing enormous pressure from the families of the hostages as well as from its Western allies. Take the United States, for instance. On Sunday, US President Joe Biden had said that he would like the fighting to be paused as far as the prisoners keep coming out. Let me just quote his exact statement. That's my goal. That's our goal, to keep this pause going beyond tomorrow so that we can continue to see more hostages come out and surge more humanitarian relief into those in need in Gaza. Now, immediately after the statement was issued, the Prime Minister of Israel made a rather interesting remark. He said that he had spoken to Joe Biden and would welcome extending the temporary truce, but only on a condition. What's that? A condition that on every additional day, 10 captives would be freed. Let me quote his statement. A longer truce would be welcome. At the same time, I also told President Biden that at the end of the outline, we will go to realizing our goals with full force, eliminating Hamas, ensuring that Gaza will not go back to being what it was, and of course, releasing all of our hostages, quote unquote. So clearly, both Israel and Hamas are in favor of extending the truce. But here's the thing. This ceasefire, you see, is quite fragile. Ever since it was announced, in fact, there have been fears of the truce falling apart. And these fears stem from the fact that Israel's operations did not fully die down. On Sunday, Israeli forces conducted a raid in the West Bank. The raid killed 8 Palestinians. This includes 2 minors. What was the raid about? Capturing a Palestinian who was suspected of involvement in an ambush. Now, from the Palestinian side, we have reports such as these. They say an Israeli hostage was released by Hamas, but without her mother. And this was despite obligations to not separate mothers from their children as a part of the ceasefire agreement. So clearly, Hamas also has not lived up to the terms and conditions of the truce. And this, in turn, begs the question, what are the chances of the truce being upheld after it is extended? And as for the hostages, does Hamas not have control over the remaining hostages? Are they being held by another group? To start with, reports saying not all hostages are with Hamas. Some of them are being held by PIJ, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, or the Islamic Jihad movement in Palestine. This is another Islamist organization which operates in Gaza. It operates as Hamas's arm. In fact, it maintains some autonomy as well. Have a look at what the group is saying now. It says it will not release the hostages it is holding. Why is that? Because it wants Israel to release the Palestinians first. In fact, it also issued a statement. Until all Palestinian prisoners are released, the Zionist soldiers in our prison will not see the color of freedom, quote unquote. Now, does that explain the delay in releasing the hostages? And if yes, then what is being done about this? According to Harrods, issues have emerged about the list of those set to be freed. And there are disagreements on both sides. Qatar is trying to bridge this gap, from what we understand, and also bring the two to consensus. And we will be closely monitoring those developments. And our correspondent Jody Cohen, in fact, has been getting us the minute-by-minute updates, has been reporting from Israel all throughout. Jody, what is the latest, first of all, that you're picking up on the hostage release?
Hi, Molly. So we know that this is day 4 of this agreement. This is the final day as yet. We know that potentially there are talks going on as to whether or not it will be extended. But as part of this deal today, 11 Israeli hostages were due to be released at 4 o'clock local time. Now, we're coming up to a 3-hour delay. So we're hearing that Hamas transferred the list of the hostages who were due to be released today. And once Israel received these, they saw that they say Hamas is not sticking to the agreements because some of the children will be released without their mothers, and that's in violation of the agreements negotiated by Qatar. And we know that that happened 2 days ago as well. There was a girl called Hila who's 12 years old, and she said that she had been with her mother up until 2 days before her release. Hamas claimed to not know where her mother was when it came time to releasing the hostages, and Hila was released. But she was released without her mother. So it remains to be seen what's happening. We're also hearing that they're not just negotiating on the final details of who is exactly going to be released today. We're also hearing that they are potentially negotiating on extending this agreement. We've heard some reports that have said 4 days. Now a report has come from Egypt that says that this could be extended by 2 days. It remains to be seen. They're cautiously optimistic that more hostages will be released this evening, but it remains to be seen what happens with that and also what happens with this potential extension that we're hearing about.
Right, Jody, I also want to discuss with you details of this hostage release and the possible reason why this delay is happening. Now, is there a possibility that Hamas is deliberately delaying the release? Because, you see, the delay also begs the question over whether Hamas has control over the rest of the hostages.
So we do understand that Hamas has control over most of the hostages. After this deal is complete, let's say the 50 Israeli hostages are all released after tonight, 90 hostages will still be mostly in Hamas's hands, but as you said, some of them are in the hands of Islamic Jihad, and a handful are reportedly also in the hands of Musk. The delay was because of this issue of whether or not remaining child hostages are the hostages today due to be released are children, and some of them reportedly might be released without their mothers, and that's in violation of this agreement. So we know that Qatar is busy negotiating, trying to resolve that. It could also be a negotiation tactic. It's a well-known negotiation tactic that if you want to renegotiate something, you broaden the criteria. So if Hamas do want to extend this deal because they don't want to resume the fighting, then it could be that they're negotiating this broader, potentially a 2-day extension, potentially even a 4-day extension. We've heard that Israel has said that they're willing to accept 1 day's pause in fighting if 10 hostages are released, and they're willing also to release 30 Palestinian prisoners as part of that agreement, up to a maximum of 10 days. And presumably that's because there's a balance between they want the goals of freeing their hostages from, so the goal of dismantling Hamas and making sure that Hamas can't infiltrate into Israel again and commit a 7th of October style massacre, which Hamas has said publicly they plan to do again and again.
Right, Jody Cohen getting us those updates. Thanks very much for now. We're leaving it there for the moment. Also with me on the broadcast this minute is Brigadier General Dr. Meir Elran, Senior Researcher at the Institute of National Security Studies. Thanks very much for being here. Now, I want to start off by asking you for your assessment of Hamas expressing its intention to extend the ceasefire. Also, what, according to you, are the chances of the truce being upheld even after it is extended?
Well, first of all, I think that Hamas has an interest in the continuation of the practice of the deal, of exchange of our kidnapped hostages with its own prisoners staying in Israel. This is because Hamas is under military pressure to a large extent. So they have an interest of in implementing the deal. Unfortunately, they are not very consistent with what they are doing. Sometimes they are too late in the executing the deals. But generally speaking, I think that they have probably an interest to continue this process because it lessens the pressure, the military pressure on their positions in the Gaza Strip. So I think that probably would have an extension beyond the 4 initial days, possibly for some more days. I don't know how long it will hold. But Israel has presented its agreement to the continuation of the exchange because, of course, we need our captive detainees, those who were kidnapped, to be back home as soon as possible.
Right.
And also Israel will be willing, as it was in the past, to release all the Israelis kept by Hamas and the other organizations to exchange them for Palestinian prisoners held by Israel. Whether this will happen or not depends to a large extent on the Hamas willingness to do that. So we'll have to wait and see.
Absolutely. I do want to talk in greater detail with you about the hostage release and the delay on that front. But here's a reminder to our viewers who might just be tuning in. These are the latest images that we're getting to you from the Affair prison in the West Bank. Now, as and when there are any developments on that front, of course, we will keep a close eye. But just for some context here, as far as the hostage release is concerned, it has been delayed. What we also understand is that there are disagreements when it comes to that hostage release, and that there are issues that are being ironed out. And Qatar, from what we understand, is trying to actually bridge that gap and bring the two sides to consensus. Simultaneously, we've been talking about how Hamas has expressed its intention to extend that 4-day truce. And as we were just discussing with our panelists there, what are the expectations that this truce will be upheld even after that extension? Going back across now to Brigadier General Dr. Meir Elran, I want to also ask you about the delay in this release, in the release of the hostages. Does Hamas, according to you, not have complete control over the remaining hostages? Also, the mediation efforts that are being undertaken by Qatar to actually bring the two sides on the same page and iron out those differences and those disagreements that reportedly have emerged.
Well, you have to remember that we are not negotiating with Hamas directly. Everything is going by the intermediates.
Yes.
Qatar, Egypt, and the United States. And this is another good reason, unfortunately, of course, for the delays and the uncertainties about the situation. But so far, the last steps have been not smooth, but still, many of them were practiced, sooner or later. And of course, this is important, but this is not the major thing. The major thing, of course, is to have our hostages back home, safe and healthy. And Israel has decided to be willing to continue with that until the last Israeli hostage is being released to Israel. And I think that this is our interest. I agree with this position, because then the next stage, of course, will be the return to the counter-offensive that Israel has launched against Hamas with the purpose, with the objective, which is very definite, is very supported by the military and by the public at large, to eliminate, to dismantle Hamas and stop it being a threat to Israel, as was the case back in October 7th. This has to stop, and it will be stopped by our military.
Right, and like I also mentioned, how there is this question mark over whether or not Hamas has complete control over the rest of the hostages, about how some of the hostages are being held by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. So what about, what do we know about any negotiations that are taking place on that front?
I don't know about any negotiation, indirect negotiations with the Palestinian Jihad. I think that we in Israel take the Hamas responsible for the entire episode. They were the ones to attack Israel on October 7th. They were the ones to conduct the atrocities that happened in these days, for the massacre of hundreds of people in Israel, close to the border, the communities close to the border. And if Hamas wants its people to be released, it has to take all the measures to bring our hostage to the last person back home. And the other thing is any other approach will be a psychological warfare against Israel, and it will be responded to with military force.
Right, we are leaving it there for the moment. Thanks very much for being here on the broadcast and sharing those perspectives with us. And as we continue to delve deeper into the hostage release situation, the reasons behind that delay, just a reminder for those of you just joining us here on Gravitas, we are piecing together those developments, also talking about how Hamas has expressed its intention to actually extend that ceasefire. But as we just pointed out, questions remain over whether or not that truce will actually be upheld even after it is extended. We're also talking about the negotiations that are currently underway regarding that hostage release, and we will continue to get you updates from conflict zones around the world, including Ukraine. So stay with us here on Gravitas. And as we talk about what is expected to unfold, let's also take a look back at what has unfolded over the weekend. Very crucial 48 hours. There were extremely emotional scenes of reunion coming out of Israel and Palestine over the last 3 days, in fact. Sharon Avigdori and her daughter, Noam, were freed from captivity. This was on Saturday. And they met their family after 49 days. This is Sharon's son, Omer. She broke down as she hugged him, and behind her you can see the daughter hugging the father. The family is finally reunited after that long wait. In fact, 3 generations of the Haran family were reunited on the 26th of November. On the 7th of October, Shushan Haran and her daughter Adi Shoham and her children, Have and Yahel, were captured by the Hamas. Nave is all of 8. Yael is just 3. They were all kidnapped from their home in Be'eri. Now they are back to Israel, but the family, you see, will never be the same again. Shoshan's husband, Avshalom Haran, was killed on the 7th of October, as was her sister and her husband. Adi Shoham's husband remains in captivity. 85-year-old Yafa Adar was among the first batch of hostages to be released. On the 7th of October, she was kidnapped from kibbutz near Oz, and this grandmother watched her friends and neighbors being killed. On the same day, a video went viral on social media showing Yafa being driven away on a golf cart. Few weeks later, there was also news of her being rescued by Israeli soldiers, and this news later turned out to be fake. Now, Yafa is finally back after spending 49 days in captivity. This is Yafa's granddaughter, Adva Adar. She says the 85-year-old survived in captivity by thinking about the family. She says Adva could hear the voices of her great-grandchildren calling her, and this gave her a lot of power. Yafa's eldest grandson is still a hostage, and now she wants to join the campaign to bring him and other hostages home. Yafa's life has changed forever. Her home has been burnt down. At 85, she needs to start afresh.
So she's all in. Just want to know how can she be part and how can she help. But also we're telling her right now, please start from recovering, from taking care of yourself, and then we will think about how can she help. But right now she comes first. Her house is not an option, as the entire kibbutz is burned and broken, and there's now no one lives there. So she needs to start over. And she's thinking with us about what's the best place for her that will give her the sense of security, but also she will feel hugged and taken care of.
Israeli-American Abigail Edan was 3 when her home was attacked. Abigail saw her mother being killed. Her father died shielding her. The young Abigail managed to walk to the home of her neighbor, but that home also was attacked. She was kidnapped. Abigail turned 4 in captivity. There were also emotional hugs being witnessed in the West Bank. Khalil Zamareh was welcomed by hundreds of people after being released from an Israeli prison. You can see Zamareh hugging his mother. Crowds gathered outside his home to celebrate the family's reunion. This is 18-year-old Qasem Awar, and that's his 17-year-old brother, Muhammad Mahmoud Awar. The duo were released from the Israeli prison on the 26th of November. Friends and family members came home to welcome the brothers, and also released from prison were 17-year-old Amin Al-Abbasi, 17-year-old Nashat Dawabsha, and 19-year-old Sultan Sarhan. Let's also talk about another question. Is artificial intelligence the future of warfare? And while that debate continues, Israel, by the way, has already started using it. Just hours after Hamas's attack on the 7th of October, a US-based drone company received a massive order. The call was from the Israeli military, and the order was for 100 drones. In just 3 weeks, the Israeli Defense Forces were equipped with the cutting-edge drones with the promise of even more to follow. You see, after Ukraine, Gaza has become the new testing ground for the latest in AI-powered defense tech. As AI takes center stage in this theater of war, people, of course, are worried. How will this marriage of AI and defense technology shape the future of warfare? And according to reports, Israel's campaign created a new demand for the state-of-the-art defense technology. Earlier, military supplies used to take place nation to nation. Now a country's defense need is often being supplied directly by the newer and smaller manufacturers. Naturally, the AI ethicists are concerned, especially about Israeli military's use of AI-driven technology to target Palestinians in Gaza. Remember, there are reports of Israeli army using AI to strike over 11,000 targets in Gaza before the temporary truce set in. And in Gaza, drones are largely being used for surveillance and looking for Hamas operatives. They are, of course, massive help as soldiers' lives are not put to risk. But the truth is, Israel discloses few specifics of how it uses AI in the war. And so some worry that Israel uses what they see as unreliable AI systems to identify and strike targets. But why just Israel? Ukraine has also used experimental AI systems. Ukrainian troops have reportedly used AI to identify Russian soldiers, weapons, and unit positions. And of course, defense companies are thrilled. After all, there is a lot of cash involved. However, it also brings a new set of headaches for governments. It appears that Israel's appetite for high-tech weapons is proving to be a big challenge for the US government. And here's the crux of the matter. Early this month, the Biden administration began implementing a new foreign policy. It was aimed at regulating the responsible military use of such cutting-edge technology. This policy was introduced in The Hague back in February and endorsed by 45 other countries. What was the goal, you ask? To tie the use of AI as well as autonomous systems in warfare within the international law of war. But, and it's a big but, neither Israel nor Ukraine are signatories. And that, you see, leaves a big hole in the collective efforts to keep the high-tech weapons operating within agreed-upon boundaries. And why these nations refrain from agreements on this international declaration? It's too early to say, but concerns around the use of military AI are valid. To begin with, the technology is developing very quickly. What may be considered the rules of engagement today could very well be outdated in 5 years. Will international rules be able to keep up with these rapid changes is the immediate question. Secondly, much of this technology is civilian, and so it's hard to restrict military development without also affecting the larger public. And this is why starting a dialogue and finding ways of imposing limits or even regulating the use of AI in warfare and in autonomous weapons is no longer just a debate. It is the need of the hour. Just look at Ukraine and West Asia. This is not the stuff of science fiction, but the reality of our times. What happens when AI acts in unpredictable ways? What happens when they make mistakes in identifying targets? Isn't the fundamental purpose of using AI in warfare to minimize human casualties? And since we are discussing artificial intelligence, how could we not discuss someone who aims to be a pioneer in the field? I'm talking about Elon Musk, the owner of X, the chairman of Tesla, the CEO of SpaceX. And as I speak, he's on a visit to Israel. To do what? To bring Starlink to the Jewish state. You see, Musk's SpaceX and Israel's government have struck an agreement to use Starlink communication in Israel and the Gaza Strip. The agreement will provide high-speed internet in the respective parts. Now, we will discuss that in detail in just a bit, but first, let's tell you how Musk's Israel visit is actually panning out. He landed in Tel Aviv earlier today, and immediately after landing, he met the country's prime minister and toured an Israeli kibbutz, which was attacked by Hamas. On your screen are visuals of that interaction. They show Musk and Netanyahu touring the Kfar Aza kibbutz. On the 7th of October, the kibbutz was stormed by Hamas. Musk was seen wearing a protective vest during the visit. He was also seen taking photos of the devastation on his phone.
Last night, some of them returned home. Not home yet, but returned to Israel. And, most of them were kidnapped from the houses over there.
When the terrorists infiltrated into the kibbutz itself, this is the house of Bill.
The timing of the visit is rather interesting, coming at a time when Musk is facing criticism over his public endorsement of an alleged anti-Semitic conspiracy on X. You see, a couple of days ago, Musk tweeted his fervent agreement with a statement that accused Jews of pushing hate against white people. The billionaire called the theory an actual truth. His reaction triggered a firestorm, to say the least. In fact, things have gotten so bad that reports say X could lose $75 million in ad revenue due to Musk's endorsement. So clearly, both Musk and X are in a precarious position. So is this visit a bid by Elon Musk to redeem himself, to undo the damage he might have done? It certainly seems so. Also, have a look at what he is bringing to the table. Starlink, a satellite internet constellation operated by his aerospace company SpaceX. It uses low Earth orbit satellites to deliver low latency internet to the users, and the service is currently not available in Israel or Gaza. A few weeks back, Elon Musk announced his intention of extending it. On the 28th of October, he said that he would allow Starlink to be used by internationally recognized aid groups in Gaza. Well, guess what? That announcement has been revoked. And why is that? Because Elon Musk and the Israeli government have arrived at a quote-unquote principal understanding that Starlink can operate only with the approval of Israel's Ministry of Communications. On your screen is a tweet by Israel's Minister of Communications. It reads, and I'm quoting, "As a result of this significant agreement, Starlink satellite units can only be operated in Israel with the approval of the Israeli Ministry of Communications, including the Gaza Strip. As the state of Israel fights against Hamas, ISIS, this understanding is vital as it is for everyone who desires a better world, which is free of evil and free of anti-Semitism for our children's sake," quote unquote. Just to put this very simply, Israel will have the final word on whether Starlink can be used in the Gaza Strip, along with which organizations are allowed to use it. The use of Starlink in Israel may save Elon Musk from accusations of anti-Semitism that's hurting his business. Another theater of conflict where Musk's technology plays an important role, Ukraine, of course. In February 2022, when the Russian invasion of Ukraine started, remember, Musk announced that SpaceX was activating Starlink services in Ukraine. He also said that many terminals were even sent to the country. And since then, the service has proven to be exceptionally effective on the battlefield. It has allowed Ukrainians to support multiple device connections during combat. And so here's the latest on the Russia-Ukraine war, the other war. Over the weekend, Russia launched its most intense drone attack on Ukraine since the war started in 2022. The Russian attack focused on the Ukrainian capital, Kiev, and according to the Ukrainian Air Force, Russia launched 75 Iranian-made Shahed drones, of which 66 were destroyed by the Ukrainian air defenses. The assault on Kiev started at 4 a.m., continuing in waves for over 6 hours. It led to power outages in 77 residential buildings, 120 institutions. The attack has been described as the most massive air attack by drones on Kiev.
Everything flew away here. You see, we've been collecting our lives. We are not same. Do you see what they did? Parasites. It went bang.
And as a result of the attack, 17,000 Ukrainian citizens went without power in Kiev. The attack was carried out on the morning of Holodomor Memorial Day. It basically commemorates the man-made famine in Soviet Ukraine that killed millions of Ukrainians from 1932 to 1933. It is marked on the fourth Saturday in November.
It was knocked down and it fell on the kindergarten. As a result of this, there was a very strong explosion. We had a window blown out here on the first floor. The window opened and the entire blast wave and fire were in our corridor. We managed to run away with the child. Thank God we are all safe and alive. And in general, as you can see, many apartments were damaged. The glass flew out. People are still in shock.
At least 5 civilians were wounded in the hours-long assault, and several buildings were damaged, including a kindergarten. The wounded included an 11-year-old child. This has been the reality of Ukraine, battered by Russia's brutal war for almost 2 years now. In addition to Kiev, the Sumy, Zaporizhia, Mykolaiv regions also were targeted, among others. In the city's Solimansky district, debris left a crater in the courtyard of a residential area, and the windows of a nearby building were blown out. Residents, most of them elderly, received medical attention at the scene. Others took shelter in a nearby subway station. On Sunday, Russia repelled Ukrainian attacks at multiple places. And according to the Russian MOD, their forces repelled attacks from the Ukrainian side in eastern and southeastern Ukraine. Russian forces also claim to have destroyed 2 air ammunition depots, multiple tanks, radar stations, as well as artillery pieces of Ukraine at different fronts. The Russian Air Defense Forces also shot down 2 Ukrainian MiG-29 fighter jets, as per reports. They also claim to have intercepted 18 Ukrainian drones. Till yesterday, the Ukrainian forces claimed that their troops have engaged in 42 battles with Russia on the front line. The war is raging near the key city of Avdiivka. Meanwhile, the Russian forces have been trying to take over this key city in Donetsk, remember, and Russia's efforts have been focused on cutting off Ukrainian supply lines into Avdiivka so that it can isolate the city. Once a coal hub, Avdiivka has become the current flashpoint in the war. The city has seen relentless assault by Russian forces. Significant portions of the city, located near Donetsk city, are now held by Russian troops. The Ukrainian forces are trying to maintain control over a stretch of territory about 8 kilometers wide. That is how close the Russian troops are. The battle for Avdiivka is important to watch out, as victory over this city for Russians would mean control over the entire Donetsk region. The city, remember, briefly fell to Russian-backed separatists in 2014, and Ukraine has spent the last 9 years building defenses and trenches to protect the city. Nearly 2 years into the Russian invasion, approximately 3 kilometers separating Ukrainian positions from the Russian ones. And both sides exchange fire daily. Since June, Ukraine has been conducting a counter-offensive, remember, but it has still not made any significant gains there. Meanwhile, Russia has increased attacks on Ukraine.
We are not only watching infantry and equipment here, but also watching the sky. Shahids, missiles, airplanes, helicopters, everything we see, we promptly report. Where it is flying, where it is coming from, what is the approximate height, and we report promptly. We have a radio, internet connection, a work phone, and we transmit all the coordinates of where it is coming from and where it is going. We not only make sure that Savaraj groups do not come in, but we also watch the sky. We listen and watch.
And as winter approaches and as the war enters a virtual stalemate, the Ukrainian soldiers will be facing their second year enduring the cold weather and the snow. Chinese President Xi Jinping is falling from his pedestal. He is going down with his country's economy. Here's the latest. Today, Hong Kong's leading stock exchange, the Hang Seng, plunged to a 2-week low. Share prices fell for the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, also the country's construction bank. Stock values of China's tech giants fell as well, including Alibaba, Tencent, car maker, also trading in red, with its share prices falling as much as 4%. And as trading closed, the Hang Seng registered a loss of 0.2%. And this downturn was indicative of the economic mess in the mainland. Today, the Beijing Stock Exchange put in place a policy. As per Reuters, this policy stops major shareholders of listed companies from selling their stocks. A major shareholder is anyone who owns at least 5% stake in a company. Quick question here. Why does China not want major shareholders to sell stake? Beijing is afraid of a domino effect, of other shareholders being nudged to liquidate their stake. It's uncertain how long his policy will last. What's certain, though, is that China's economy is on the brink of collapse. Companies are shutting down. Employees are being told to leave. The Alibaba Group has shut down its quantum computing research lab. 30 people have been fired. More jobs across the group on the line. They are calling it restructuring. But we know better than that to take the narrative coming from China on face value. Be it COVID-19, the new mysterious pneumonia, or the mayhem in China's economic sector. Sample this. Alibaba has laid off over 30,000 employees in the previous quarters. And earlier this month, Alibaba cancelled the planned listing of its cloud service division. Data from China's National Bureau of Statistics also showing that profits in Chinese companies have decreased 7.8% in the first 10 months of 2023 as compared to last year. There is a sense of fear and distrust in the air in China. Record number of youths are sitting jobless at home, at least 1 in 5. In June this year, in fact, China's youth unemployment rate reached an unprecedented 21.3%. The data was too embarrassing for Xi Jinping. In August, China decided to suspend the release of these numbers. Chinese youth today are losing faith in the country's economic sector. We saw this over the weekend. 3 million people in China appeared for China's civil service exams. There were nearly 40,000 vacancies, and on an average, 77 candidates appeared for every position. There were exam centers in at least 237 Chinese cities. Chinese youth queued up, deciding to trade fat pay checks for security and apparent stability of government jobs. And we have more indicators of the economic collapse. China's shadow banks are going bankrupt. What are shadow banks, you ask? Shadow banks essentially are a system of lenders, brokers, and other financial intermediaries who fall outside the traditional banking system, meaning that they are exempt from banking regulations. In other words, the risk, liquidity, and capital restrictions that apply to traditional banks do not apply to these shadow banks. In China, shadow banks are a $2.9 trillion sector. They played a key role in building China's real estate sector. The housing sector is now in debt, as we've been telling you, and these shadow banks also are declaring insolvency. Case in point, Zhongzi Enterprise Group. It is one of China's largest shadow banks. It has lent billions, in fact, to the real estate sector. Zhongzi has declared severe insolvency. The bank, in fact, wrote a letter to its investors. It claims its liabilities stand at $64 billion and outstrips its assets, which is estimated to be around $38 billion. The bank attributes the deficit to internal management issues. And China is now investigating this bank. Beijing has not said which officials are under scrutiny and what role they play in the crisis. What we do know is that Zhongzi's founder, Xie Zikun, died of a heart attack in the year 2021. So he surely is not to be blamed. Now, how much role has the Chinese President Xi Jinping played in bringing China's economy to its knees? Ever since Xi Jinping came to power, he became obsessed with changing the status quo of the industrial sector. You could almost say that he was obsessed about shaking things up. He went after the tech sector, he cracked down on the housing sector, went after developers, and this triggered a domino effect. According to Bloomberg figures, home prices in China's Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities have fallen by at least 15%. Local governments were affected. In 1994, China implemented a tax-sharing reform, and this diverted more revenue sources to the central government. Since then, municipalities relied heavily on land sales. It accounted for 1/3 of their income. With the collapse of the property sector, local governments had to resort to borrowing from LGFVs or local government financing vehicles. Goldman Sachs estimating that China's local government debt has reached $23 trillion. Let me repeat that for you. $23 trillion. School teachers have felt the pinch. Their salaries have been cut. Same with civil servants. And how can we possibly forget Xi's zero COVID policy? It was a death knell for Chinese economy. Xi's policies have driven the Chinese economy to the brink of collapse, and this, it appears, has not gone down too well with the Chinese Communist Party. A key meeting was held on the 31st of October. The Chinese Premier, Li Qiang, was made the head of the Central Finance Commission, or China's top finance body. Ideally, Xi Jinping is supposed to be chairing this body. So what explains the shift in power? Now, Beijing wants you to believe that it is collective leadership, that Xi Jinping is sharing power. But the truth is far from it. And the truth is that Xi Jinping is losing power. He has failed to deliver on the principal doctrine of communism, economic welfare. And he is being forced to give up control for a man who positioned himself on the lines of Mao Zedong, whose policies reflected total control, absolute dictatorship. For a man who won a record third term in office, this new development, an unexpected appointment, pointing towards a possible internal rift. We are not surprised. China's property bubble has burst. Banks have been driven to the edge. The economy is on its knee, and Xi Jinping is being made to pay the price. The Chinese President Xi Jinping is falling from his pedestal. And as those conflicts rage on in different parts of the world, let's now turn our attention to a desperate struggle unfolding in Uttarakhand in India. The Silkyara tunnel collapse, a crisis unfolding far from the battlefields of the globe, is equally gripping. Today, in fact, marks the 16th day since the tragedy, and the promised light at the end of the tunnel remains elusive. But amid the wait and the worry, there's a flurry of activity and a renewed sense of urgency in the ongoing rescue mission. Now, here's the latest from on the ground. Rescue teams A mix of dedicated souls from various backgrounds are working relentlessly at the collapse site. And today has been crucial in their endeavor as the focus has been sharply on vertical drilling, a strategic pivot following the setbacks faced in horizontal drilling. In parallel, plans for manual rescue efforts are being drawn up involving the expertise of the Indian Army engineers, specialized rat miners and a host of technicians. These shifts in the strategy illustrating the complexity of the rescue operation. The vertical drilling initiated on Sunday afternoon is an ambitious attempt to bore through approximately 110 meters of the mountain. And the new drilling machine deployed following the unfortunate failure of the American auger in horizontal drilling is reportedly making steady progress. And in a major development earlier today, Lieutenant General Saeed Atta Hasnain from the National Disaster Management Authority announced a major breakthrough. The broken blades of the auger machine, which had been a significant obstacle, have been fully retrieved now. However, he stated that the auger machine would be sidelined going forward, given the time-consuming nature of its operation. Mahmood Ahmad, the Managing Director of the National Highways and Infrastructure Development Corporation, shared an update on the timeline of the rescue efforts. He highlighted that the current slow but steady and more reliable process is expected to be complete by the 30th of November, despite a yellow alert from the Indian Met Department indicating the possibility of light rains. Officials have confirmed that the rescue operations will continue unabated. Meanwhile, the Uttarakhand Chief Minister is set to visit the rescue site to personally assess the situation on the ground, and his presence is not just a gesture of support but also a testament to the gravity of the situation. And in a display of faith and hope, prayers were offered at the site as well, with people from all walks of life gathering to pray for the safety and swift rescue of those trapped workers. A video of a touching gesture did the rounds as well. The Union Minister, General V.K. Singh, joined in these prayers at a temporary temple built near the mouth of the tunnel. The day later saw a delegation led by the Principal Secretary to the Prime Minister, Pramod Kumar Mishra, arriving at the site. The top central government official visited the tunnel, not just reviewing the ongoing efforts, but also directly communicating with the trapped workers. And this interaction sent out a strong message of hope and support to the workers and their anxious families. And amid these critical efforts, the trapped workers continue to receive life-sustaining supplies. Fresh cooked food, water, and essential medical supplies are being sent through a small 6-inch tunnel, ensuring that their basic needs are met under these challenging circumstances. Their emotional well-being also is being regularly monitored. And looking ahead, once the vertical drilling reaches its intended depths, a daring aerial rescue operation is planned. This phase of the mission will likely involve airlifting the 41 trapped workers from the tunnel using a helicopter and harness ropes. Some authorities, in fact, estimating this final phase could even unfold in the next 24 hours, bringing the rescue operation to an earlier close than 30th of November. And this final stage demands precision, swiftness, and a high level of coordination across multiple stakeholders. This ongoing saga of human resilience and teamwork under extreme pressure is a reminder of the indomitable human spirit. Now, as the rescue operation enters what could be its final stages, we will continue to monitor those developments. And like we said right at the beginning, given the pace of developments unfolding as far as the Israel-Hamas hostage release situation and the ceasefire are concerned, some news that's breaking just this minute: Israel and Hamas have officially agreed to extend the temporary ceasefire. In fact, the Qatari officials are claiming that as part of the ongoing mediation, an agreement has been reached to extend the humanitarian truce for 2 days now. That's the latest that we have for you at this point. Remember, a lot of question marks earlier on over the extension of the truce, and earlier this evening, as we pointed out, Hamas had expressed its intention to extend that truce, and now this tweet On your screen, the state of Qatar announces as part of the ongoing mediation, an agreement has been reached to extend the humanitarian truce for an additional 2 days in the Gaza Strip. So there we have the latest as far as the extension of that truce is concerned for a period of 2 days for now. But a lot of questions still remain, specifically also over the hostage release situation. That's all we have time for in this edition of Gravitas. We're taking a very short break this minute. Stay with us.
As democracy strengthens,
Israel woke up to a barrage of thousands of rockets fired from the Gaza Strip.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
Hostilities have broken out between Israel and Palestine, and the tensions that had been gathering